Dear Dad, it's with great regret and sorrow that I'm writing to you.
Can I interrupt you a second? Can you just give us an idea how old is your son?
He's 15.
Right. Okay.
Good question. A very question. Because the next sentence is quite shocking. I had to elope with my new girlfriend because I wanted to avoid a scene with Mum and you. I've been finding real passion with Stacey, and she's so nice, but I know you wouldn't approve of all her piercings, tattoos, her bike leathers, and because she's so much older than I am. But it's not in the passion, Dad. She's pregnant. Stacey says we'll be very happy together. She owns a caravan in the woods. There's a stack of firewood for the whole winter through till March next year. And we share the dream of having many, many more children together. Stacey's opened my eyes to the fact that marijuana doesn't really hurt anyone. We'll be growing it for ourselves and trading it with the other people in the commune for all the cocaine that we want. In the meantime, we'll pray that science will find a cure for AIDS so that Stacey can get better. She sure deserves it. Don't worry, Dad, I'm 15 and I know how to take care of myself. And someday I'm sure that we'll be back to visit so you and Mum can get to know your many, many grandchildren. Love, your son James. And it's a PS. I haven't read the PS yet. PS, Dad, none of this is true. I'm over at Tommy's house. I just wanted to remind you that there are worse things in life than the school report that's on my desk. I love you, Dad. Call me when it's safe to come home.
Right, so as you might have gathered, Mark's, I don't want to call you a car salesman, but he runs a chain of car dealerships, I think, so, the posh term. And just to put his business in some context, he sells around 2,500 cars a year. He does around 60 services a day, 20 MOTs a day, and he employs about 104 staff. Right, so thinking about from where you are now, and think back in the midst of time, how did it all begin for you? How did you decide to start selling cars and to get into the car business?
I think it's really important for all of us, whatever stage of life we're at, is to recognise the talents God's given us. And it became clear to me at a fairly young age that I had a bit of skill in turning a few quid and being more commercially aware than my classmates. This came as quite a shock to me when I was 8, and long before I knew the facts of life and the birds and the bees. I put 2 hamsters in a cage together, turned the lights down low, and put some Andy Williams on, and unbelievably, just 16 days later, there were 10 little hamsters running around the cage. And whilst I was no animal lover, I knew I could turn these little rodents into hard cash in the school playground. So I had a fairly successful hamster retail operation at the age of 8 in my school in Birkenhead. So that's really when I got a real taste for business.
At the age of 8, did you know the difference between male and female?
No, it's Rick, it was totally potluck. And some of the more questionable lifestyles read about in the press these days, they were very much, heterosexually inclined, my hamsters in the early 70s. So, no, I was home and dry on that front. If you look at your grandson's hamster, next up in Yorkshire, Rick, the male hamster has more of a pointed bottom. Oh. And not surprisingly, God's given lady hamsters these beautiful curvaceous bottoms. So that's something you can take away tonight if nothing else. Yeah. And from then I started buying and selling pedal bikes at 11 or 12. And I think really when I went to university, Steve, I got the chance to start my own business proper. So I picked a course that was less than 10 hours a week study, leaving 158 hours a week to meet girls for the first time, all boys school, and run a motorcycle retail operation. So we rented a house from a guy called Ronnie Lasardi. Now Ronnie had a very famous niece called
Linda.
But Ronnie didn't have the same upper torso that Linda had. So he never made it in the national newspapers. But what Ronnie did have was a fleet of ice cream vans and a whole chain of questionable rat-infested student accommodation in Headingley and Leeds. And for just £7 a week in 1982, you could rent with 4 other chums one of Ronnie's houses. And he took 4 cheques off us, one dated today, September, one dated January, one dated May, post-dated, and he jumped into Mercedes. We never ever saw him again. So we figured out if we could pay this plump lass from the Christian Union, who was also studying economics, 50p each, she could photocopy the lecture notes on a Wednesday for economic history, and we could scarp it in my Bedford van, one up from an A35, but not much in fairness, Dave. And we'd scarp it from Leeds to Bradford and go to the motorbike auction where they're selling all the repossessed bikes from the finance companies. So we turned the kitchen into a workshop, pulled all the hygiene and QA cabinets off the wall and put tool boards up, and we threw the rat-infested sofa out and made it into a showroom. And we got through about 200 bikes in that year, and we all managed to get our degrees as well. So that was how my real appetite for business started, yeah.
You know, in some ways, how did you get from selling bikes to run a successful car dealership?
Well, I worked for 2 motor manufacturers after university, and I worked for 2 dealer groups who have national chains, so I cut my teeth, understood that. But I really sensed God saying to me there's an opportunity to work for myself. So when Anita and I married in 1991, we put £100 jointly, £50 each into a bank account, and borrowed £10,000 off this nutty Barclays bank manager. Was very brave and lent us his money. So we started very modestly with a petrol station. And we understood petrol quite easily because I was quite numerate and I understood numbers. And so every 9 months we took another petrol station on. So we had 4 after 3 years. But in my heart I really wanted my own car dealership. It took 6 years to get there because you need some wool on your back before you can actually illustrate the bank. You're going to put something down alongside the mortgage they give you to open a business. But the game plan really has been all about having a very sharp focus on what the customer wants, whether it's a gallon of fuel, a Mars bar, a pint of milk, or a replacement car. And I think in an industry that isn't best known for customer service, and people aren't spending £10, they're spending £10,000 or a lot more, I thought if we can get into an industry and be different and better, and where an industry like double glazing, life assurance, they're all coming out now, aren't they? Or second-hand cars. If the customer service level's there, and we could actually just come in about there, we'd be quite well thought of and we'd be moderately successful. So that was the game plan really as we started off.
And so once you got the thing up and running, in what ways has your Christian faith impacted on the way that you run the firm?
Oh, hugely. Because our Bibles, fellas, give us a great framework for living life, don't they? Trying to hold marriages together, trying to hold together as being good fathers, and obviously the working environment too. So every decision we make in the business is underpinned by Scripture, and to this day, I rely on other people encouraging me and pointing me to certain biblical principles or individual verses in the Bible to make sense of what I'm doing. So really important, Steve, yeah.
And so with that in mind, obviously you're running a business. We mentioned before you've got 104 staff. In what way do you treat your staff? How do you treat your staff? Bearing in mind, you've got to run the business, but you're also a Christian. How does that impact on the way you treat your staff?
You might think, fellas, that if you're a Christian, you've got to be a soft touch and a bit of a walkover. And that isn't true. And you may think you've also got to be a bit of a soft touch with customers, because believe it or not, the customer isn't always right. So you need to be measured. I think you need to be very balanced about things. I think both customers and staff look for you to be consistent, which isn't easy, because in human terms we've all got tempers and we'll get angry about things, and I fall prey to that as much as the next man. But I think, in terms of how I look after the team at work, Steve, I'm probably the closest most of my guys and girls are going to get to seeing a vicar in the next 12 months. Let's be frank and open with each other. So I think God's given me a bit of a job of pastoring the staff and looking out for them. So, for example, I'll know when everyone, it's not clever this guys, but I'll know when everyone's birthday is. It's in red ink in my diary. So I'll walk in each day, and 1 in 3 days, if you follow the maths, someone's got a birthday. And I'll walk up to them and say, happy birthday, Pete, Julie. Hope you have a great day. Sorry I've got to be in work, but that's how it is. Bring the buns in at lunchtime for everyone. And if it's a Saturday or a Sunday, I'll ring them at home. Equally so, I want to be there for them for some of the joys in life. And my dad was head of personnel at Cadbury Schweppes. And many of you know Cadbury's, alongside Roundtree's and Fry's, had a very strong Quaker tradition. And when you got married at Cadbury, you should go the week before to see Sir Adrian Cadbury or Sir Timothy Cadbury. And they'd sit you down in the office for 10 minutes, ask you about your wedding and where the reception was and honeymoon, and then they'd give you a Cadbury's Bible. And all over the Wirral, because there's a massive Cadbury's factory just outside Birkenhead, there are Cadbury's Bibles everywhere, all these young couples getting Cadbury's Bibles. In the 21st century, not everyone gets married, and I'm sure that's an issue in Leyland, it's on the Wirral. So I thought to myself, how can I in some way replicate what the Cadbury family did for their staff? And we decided to go and visit every newborn baby in the business. So if you have a baby, I come and see you. And Anita and I will give you a beautifully handcrafted on this pair of little blue or pink Wellington boots, which people don't get newborns because you don't start walking until you're 12 months old. And we gave them a children's Bible, a very colourful, pictorially elegant children's Bible. And that's very special for us to go and see staff, at the times of great joy in their lives. There's all this smell of fresh paint sometimes when you go to the people's houses. Because in the old days, 20 years ago, there were colleagues my age, but now I've got staff who I suppose could be my kids in their mid-20s. And you can imagine the mum-in-laws coming and brighten the place up. But it's lovely to go, and we're there for them, and it's a real treat. And I think that small gift of a Bible once again reinforces the importance of biblical principles in life. And equally so, Steve, I feel I've got to be there when they're on the buffers. So working with me doesn't mean you're immune from terminal illness. And my number 2 at work's, his wife is slipping with cancer. She's late 30s, had it for 7 years. We've got poorly children. We've got marriage breakdown. We've got early death and bereavement. One of our staff died in service the first time last year. And also, a big thing nowadays is personal debt. And you wise fellas around the room, you can't even spell the word credit card, and you spent what you had rather than spend what you didn't have. Someone came to see me 4 months ago at work, and I was the only person that he felt he could tell, which made me not very fortunate, but also very privileged. He's run up £27,000 on credit cards, and he can't tell his wife. And many businesses either wouldn't be interested, or they'd say your reliability. I think we'll draw a line on things. But what I've decided with my finance director is walk this 10-year journey with him to deal with the 27 grand, because it's not a quick fix. So that's something I'm challenged about, and I'm very fortunate to be able to get involved with the staff. The size of business we've got, if it was 3 times the size, it wouldn't be possible.
So when you recruit staff, at what point do they, do you tell them, or at what point do they realise that actually they're going to work for, a Christian underpinned firm?
Well, we are known locally, Steve, as a business that's different. And whatever words you use, you might hear people say when you ask them to interview, the second interview, what do you know about the business? A guy might say, well, I hear you're very religious. And as Christians, we're always trying to be quite cheesy and say, oh no, we're not religious, we're people of faith. I've got a personal relationship with God. But that's not always the wisest thing to say. But we're known as a business that's driven by biblical principles. We don't open our business on a Sunday, which you might talk more about later. So that defines us. And I think given the hours people work in the motor industry, people love the industry, they love cars, but they don't want to compromise home life. So we do become the employer of choice, because we're the only 3 dealerships out of 50 that close on a Sunday. So people want to work with us. It's aspirational to work with us because of the lifestyle choices they make. So, yeah, I mean, we're known as a business that's religious or run on Christian principles, or the main man's, a Christian. But I don't think it's my job to tell them. I think it's a gradual awakening as they spend time with us, which is, I think, how it should be, really. Yeah.
So, given that then, you've obviously we talked about the staff, you mentioned customers before. Which would you say was more important, staff or the customers?
Well, I said before, you've got the phrase, customers always right, the customer comes first. I really don't think that's the case. I need to be loyal and supportive and demanding of my team. Because if my teams plural, don't deliver outstanding or even legendary customer service, my customers aren't going to follow us. So I've got extremely high standards and requirements for my staff. I don't want to think it's a walk in the park working with us. But if we get the right people working for us, they deliver great service to customers. This might amuse you, but because most of the 3 manufacturers we represent spend about £20 million a year on TV and the newspapers, they send a mystery shopper, talking about Dave in the hotel industry, into one of our showrooms. And they will pose as a prospective customer with a camera no bigger than the button on the sides of my shirt, and they will video the whole experience. Because they want to know that when Seth walks in, having responded to this very upmarket television advert, that you're going to have an outstanding experience. And so in the same way, you have a first interview with my departmental head and his or her assistant, and before I second interview, I send the mystery shopper in to see you in your existing place of work, Steve, at County Council. And we reject 3 out of 4 after that video. So the eye contact's not there, the interpersonal skills aren't there, that sense of empathy, getting alongside people isn't there. You can say an awful lot in an interview that really doesn't translate into how you are in the workplace. So we don't make a fuss of it, don't shout about it. You're far enough away from Chester for me to tell you this, but we do video mystery shop everyone, and only 1 in 4 get through, having passed an interview, they then slip up a mystery shop.
In the business, and things happen all the time, don't they? Good things and bad things, and things go well and things don't go so well. So do you find at times there's anything that will really challenge your faith when you run the business day to day?
Well, the biggest issue for me was our first dealership was Mitsubishi, and we started with Mitsubishi in 1996, and amazingly, with a great team of colleagues around me, we were their dealership of the year very soon after, and it's never happened before, but we were then dealership of the year in the UK out of about 140 businesses, the consecutive year again. In 2004, 2003, a new dealership contract was issued across the whole industry, all makes of cars. And for the most part, it gave more power to the dealer from the manufacturer. But Mitsubishi took the line that they wanted to insist that everyone open their business on a Sunday. Which was fine for 95% because they opened their businesses locally on a Sunday. A small number of us, 6 or 7, didn't open on a Sunday for commercial reasons, wrong location, or for faith reasons. That's my line. And when I heard that Mitsubishi changed the contract, I went to see the managing director of Mitsubishi UK, who's based in Cirencester in Gloucestershire, who in fact was an old graduate friend of mine at Ford Motor Company, and I took my 2 directors down. He had a couple of directors, it was a bit of a shootout at the OK Corral in the boardroom, and I said, Jim, I'm really unhappy about this line you're taking on Sunday trading. He said, oh, you'll sell more cars. And I said, be that as it may, but we're not open on a Sunday. He said, don't give me all that religious claptrap, Mark. He said, let's just get on with the job. We all want to make more money, don't we? I said, we want profitable businesses, but not at the expense of the important things in life. He said, you wouldn't give your Mitsubishi dealership over a silly thing like Sundays, would you? And I said to him, you wouldn't give your dealer of the year a termination contract over a silly thing like Sundays. And it became very clear there was an impasse, and you might say, well, I have to go away and think about it long and hard. But there was really no decision to make because we weren't going to run on a Sunday. So I said to Jim, across that boardroom table, I said, Jim, at the end of the day, I'm more accountable to my ultimate manufacturer than my motor manufacturer. I said, when the final whistle blows, I said, that's more important than having a relationship with the car company. And he said, right, that's the end then. And so we trusted God that we'd done the right thing, which wasn't easy because I had 30 staff and in 9 months' time they were going to lose their jobs. But amazingly, a significant majority of staff said to me on a one-on-one basis, Mark, I don't know where this is going or the journey we're on, love the business, but support what you've done, even if that means us losing our jobs. On the last day of June 2004, on a Friday night, everyone took their Mitsubishi gear off on a Friday and put the laundry for the last time. We walked out, we locked the front door, and that was the last time we ever went into that dealership. And we all lost the jobs. Providentially, in God's amazing timing, the following Monday morning, 6 miles up the road, all 30 staff walked into a brand new Mazda business, Japanese, tick, 2% market share, tick, great range of cars, tick, and we look back saying, aren't we glad we trusted God? And we did. And I wrote to all 2,000 customers, because many of them were quite rightly upset, because they just bought a car from us, and they were relying on us to be there for servicing and parts and warranty work for at least 3 years. And I quoted that letter, that lovely verse in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 30. It says, he who honours God, God will honour. And I really sense I've done the right thing. And with one exception, 158, 160 of those customers wrote back to me, encouraging me for the decision I've made, which is really heartening. So that's the most significant challenge of us as a Christian. But you look back and sometimes you don't know where you are. Many of us been in a situation in life where you think you should trust God for something, but you don't know what the outcome's going to be. And that's how we found ourselves. Yeah.
The next question I've got really is about, it kind of follows on from what you were just saying there. So you walked away from Mitsubishi, went into Mazda, and that became a success. So how would you measure success? I mean, is that one way of measuring it, the fact that God blessed you, or is another way, is it the number of cars you sell, how much money you make? How do you measure success in your life and in business?
I don't think we should shy away, fellas, from what the world would view as measurements of good business performance. So we have to submit our accounts to each of our 3 manufacturers every month, and then within a fortnight we get our results on a report alongside the national averages, so we can compare how we're doing in sales, service and parts. And it's a 20-page document, so it's very thorough, and I like the numbers, so that works well for us. So naturally, if you are towards the top, or if not at the top nationally in terms of financial performance, you're doing something well. And our business is for size now that, we are producing significant profits, not because we're greedy, but because we're all doing our job well. And if we weren't producing a significant return, there'd be some flaws and problems in the business. So we would measure our financial performance. I'd measure something called staff turnover. Have you come across the word staff turnover? In the industry, it's about 35%. So that means we start the year with 100 staff. 35 will leave during the 12 months. McDonald's is 60, but let's not compare ourselves to McDonald's. But if you talked about staff at your local GP surgery, the same battle axe is probably answering the phone for the last 20 years, and the same GPs there. So that continuity, that familiarity is really important. If you get recruitment right in the first place, though, you're not having to make decisions with people you wish you hadn't recruited. So because the recruitment is so thorough, we lost 5 out of our 104 staff last year. 1 retired, 1 emigrated, 1 didn't get what we're doing, so we were gracious, but we had to draw a line of things. 1 left our industry to go back into the restaurant world, and 2 emigrated to Australia with the Spanish. So not knowing they're doing what they're doing in Birkenhead in the sunshine rather than the rain. So we don't have much staff turnover. I call them my untouchables. We don't have an HR manager or a personnel manager because I think I can manage it myself with that level of turnover. And we don't advertise for staff because we don't have a need to replace staff. And we don't have cock-ups because new staff make more cock-ups than mature staff. And we don't have huge retraining budgets because people are trained and we stick with them. So it does mean we can pay our staff 20% over the industry rates, and I call them my untouchables because unless you've got a real hang-up with me and our culture, you're going to stay. So that's how it works out. Yeah.
So obviously running a business the size you do must be demanding on you. How do you balance? We often talk about work-life balance in council terms, because that's why we all work flexi time. How do you balance running the business with being a dad and a husband?
It's not easy, and I think we're all at different stages of life, and your kids might have left the nest, and that's probably even more incumbent on you to work at your marriages now. And if you are well and truly retired, you've probably got some adorable grandchildren who need to see you, need your support, and need your interest in whatever they're doing in life. So I think you do not want to have on your gravestone. I've never met anyone else has got one on the gravestone. I wish I'd spent more time in the office, because it's rarely a wish that someone has. So there's a great outfit called Care for the Family, headed up by an amazing guy called Rob Parsons. They're based in Cardiff, and their prime raison d'etre reason for being is that they want to strengthen marriages and strengthen family life. And I brought some books actually this evening, Steve, which you guys are really welcome to take. One's called 60-Minute Family, which talks about how well you're balancing your family life, and one's called 60-Minute Marriage, and there might be some 60-minute fathers as well. So don't take them all, one person, but there's probably a book each of you to take tonight. It'd be lovely, it'll give you something to chew over. Your girls love it when they get home. You say, do you know what, I've been out with the lads, and I just want to work harder on marriage, love. In fact, perhaps we could say whole sentences together about how much I love you, and she says, oh, tell me more, this is fantastic. So,
what do you mean? She says, what have you been doing?
Yeah. No, but your women folk would be thrilled if you'd come back tonight from a night out with Seth, talking about how you can improve your marriages. So the girls love it. So milk it for all you can. You make a point of bringing your kids, and I've got two lads, Elliot is 11 and James is 15, and they all would wait and expect from a phone call from me. So Elliot's not going to be awake at 9:30, so he'll chat with me in the car at 7. I'll call James at 9:30, and we'll catch him and see how his day is. And you need to be there for them, and I think absentee dads, it does happen, and marriages break down, but the harder you can work at the work-life balance stuff, the more important. If I'm away for more than one night, Steve, I'll put a handwritten note under the boys' pillows. Not that kind of note.
I'm going to say, so James going to get worried when he
So I just think it's really important to work at these things, because your kids will remember the family time that you take for granted. And I'm the kind of guy, when my phone rings, I get a buzz about, I come to life, and the worst thing you can ever do is you read your kid a bedtime story and the phone rings, and you give your child the impression the phone call is more important than the bedtime story you're reading to him or her. Yeah.
So, thinking back, can you give us a sort of like a potted testimony of how you became a Christian?
Yeah. And I'm not sure where you guys are all tonight. I mean, I don't know anything at all about it, other than your group of guys like to get together once a month and have good food and a second-rate speaker behind a microphone. So wherever you are on this whole amazing, exciting Christian journey, I'm coming from a place that I've developed a personal relationship with God. I've let him talk to him, pray to him, talk with others about my Christian faith, and be totally clear that he loves and cares for me deeply as an individual, along with 7 billion other people. So I had a fairly trad upbringing, really. Mum and Dad thought it would be the nice thing for the 3 Mitchell boys to go to church, so went to Sunday school, and I, with my 2 brothers, are the worst kids on the planet, because we're the guys who took the stink bombs in, we had to evacuate the Sunday school at least once a month. We took the whoopee cushions in, just the time we were getting very serious. We took the spiders and the dead this and the dead the other in. So we weren't the most pleasant of Sunday school kids, but they tolerated us. And these old dears, these cranky old dears, week by week, faithfully brought the Bible stories to life for us. I call them all cranky old dears, but I'm 50 now, so that would have been about 40 years ago, and these women are about 70 now. So in retrospect, they were probably gorgeous 30-year-olds, but they seemed like 70, but they were in fact probably about 30. And they're lovely now, so they've been lovelier, even lovelier than 40 years ago. But they have this ability, Steve, to bring some of the most well-known Old Testament stories to life again. So Moses parting the sea, Daniel lion's den, and the whole host of, I believe, true stories in the Old Testament. They're meant like James Bond films. And so when the chance came to go away for a week, when I was 11, for a residential camp with footing and canoeing and kayaking and climbing in the daytime, at the end of the day, someone having a thought for the day for us, that's when, over 5 or 6 consecutive nights, it all began to make sense to me personally. And there was this bloke called Steve Helens, who I'm never going to see again this side of heaven, I don't think. But he said to me, Mark, would you like to become a Christian? And I said, do you know what, I think I would. I don't really understand the implications next 60 or 70 years. I haven't got any credit card debt, I've got a mortgage, I haven't got marriage problems, I'm 11. But I think I would like to follow Jesus Christ and live my life as God wanted me to live it. So that's the time, I suppose, very simplistically, Steve, but very sincerely, I decided to become a Christian. It's not been easy, and life throws all kinds of things at you that you didn't contemplate when you're 11. But that's the time for me. Now, I know for many guys, you look back and say, well, it was just a gradual thing for me. It was just a warming of my spirit, and over time, it's just made a lot of sense to me. And it doesn't matter how it is for us as individuals. What's most important is we really clearly understand and appreciate and value God's love and concern for us, and we try and understand God's plan for our lives. And that's been a big deal for me.
And so, how's that translated to how you live your life now? So, a bit further on than when you were 11.
I still speed a bit, yeah, not as fast as you, Steve, but speed a bit. I'm human and I fail as much as the next man, so I struggle a little bit with being quick-tempered. And I can be short on occasions, which isn't good. And other things that face fellas, I think on the... I'm not saying I don't want to say, but I'm just saying we are more susceptible fellas to some of the lustful aspects of our creation and our sinful nature. And I think so we've got to be very careful, haven't we, as to how we manage relationships with other friends, women colleagues at work, and at the same time treasuring the women that God's given us to, the woman that God's given me to love and to nurture. And so I guess I'm mixed up as much as the next man with all the challenges that life throws at us. But for me, I think there are two things we've got to guard against. And Martin, a good mate of mine, has come tonight. Really appreciate him coming to keep me awake in the car on the way back. There's a really key Christian leader who has decided to leave his wife and children and set up with a woman in the last 2 weeks, and the damage that's done to the church he's involved with in the home counties and the work he's involved with is immense and going to impact thousands and thousands of people. So we've got to hold strong to Scripture, fellas, and we've got to hold strong to the important things in life, and most important things, and the people God's entrusted us to look after.
So, that's fantastic. I'm thinking now in terms of like the standard man in the street. Perhaps they come into your showroom. They come into your showroom and they meet you and they look at who you are and what you do. So a question they might ask is, and I notice it's parked out front. I presume that's your Lexus on the front there.
Is it on that side?
Yeah, the nice black one. Is that yours?
Yeah.
So they might say, right, you're a Christian, but you know, you've got like a really expensive car. I don't know how much it costs because I've never bought a Lexus. But
I'll send a brochure through to you.
yeah, cheers. No, I'm in the market for a Mazda 6 actually, but we'll talk about that later. So how can you have such an expensive car and when the world's full of people who can't even afford to eat? And people have asked me this at work, and they've not asked me how come I've got a Lexus and people can't afford to eat. But how can you be a Christian and live in a house in England and have like Xbox and TV and all that? And there's people in India or wherever they can't even afford to eat.
Yeah. It would be very easy, Steve, to try and give you a really cheap throwaway answer. Okay. And I shan't. If you have a Lexus franchise, you have to have 8 demonstration models on the road at any time. So if you came in to evaluate the car for 24 hours, there's a car to do that. And ordinarily those demonstration models, whichever franchise you've got, are used by the staff within the business as well. So I'm very fortunate, and I really do appreciate this gift of a car I have to use. And I suppose the more comfortable the car is, the more easy travelling is. So I was in Hereford yesterday, and I'm with you all this evening. It is an expensive car. It belongs to the business rather than me. And although I own the business, I'm an employee of the business as much as the other 100 colleagues I have. So the reason I'm in that car is because we have a Lexus franchise, and if I had a Fiat franchise, there'd be a Fiat car outside, or a Bentley franchise. So the next question might be, why have you got a Lexus franchise? And I'd probably say to you, the appeal of Lexus to me, it's a premium brand, it's the best engineered car in the world, beyond question. But it doesn't make the same, and I've been very careful, make the same extrovert statements that a BMW would, a Mercedes would, and probably a Jaguar as well. So the Lexus brand proposition is outstanding customer service and legendary build quality car. God's put me in a place where I meet some really interesting people, many of whom have got wealth beyond, wildest dreams, really. And they have cars from us, and there's a chance for me to engage with them, talking about spiritual things or Christian things with them. So that's an interesting door opener for me. But even when there are people dying in Africa, Steve, tonight as we're meeting here, I could have parked a £10,000 Skoda outside, and you could quite rightly ask me the same question. So God expects us to handle the whole stewardship issue very carefully. In the Old Testament, God talks about us giving 1/10 of our income, or 1/10 of our company profits in our case, back to Him. And we're very keen to do that, and we do that, not a big fancy cardboard check publicity kind of way. We do that through a little trust fund we have. We do some very interesting stuff. But I think God also looks at the heart as well. And this might sound like a bit of a cop-out, and I'll just say that, but I don't want to position the financial side too far aside, but God really looks at what's in your heart, and I think God won't give a hoot what car I was driving or anyone else was driving to get to heaven, It's a Ren Laguna.
You won't get in then.
No, but all the stuff that we in 2012 place significance on, is going to be so irrelevant to God. And we're living here in 2012, and 100 years ago people were in the same pub here, because I've been told it's 1830s the pub. In 1912, we all had, culture was different, life was different, the values were different again. So I'm not getting overhead up on the fact that I'm able to run a new car, but I struggle immensely with something called the prosperity gospel. Have any of you heard of that? And the prosperity gospel talks about if you end up with a few quid, it's a sign of God's blessing on your life. And the Americans are very big on it. And you get into the television channels with ring this toll-free number and give towards this ministry. And you find you've got church leaders living extraordinarily inappropriate lives and lifestyles. So I just make sure there's 3 guys quite separate. They don't know each other, but the three guys who mentor me, ask me all the big questions, Steve, and they've always been there to make life difficult for me in a gracious and loving kind of way to ask these kind of questions. When I was 25, I was running a Jaguar dealership in Worcester in the Cotswolds, and the sales manager was off site, and the sales team were in a meeting, and there was this tramp looking through the glass door. It was a very impressive show because they built a high spec, and I was near the door picking something up, and I acknowledged him, and I went over to hello to him outside, and he said, would you mind if I came in? It was tramp. And I said, yeah, come in. He said, my goodness, he said, I've always wanted to walk through this door. He said, I live in Worcester. I said, oh, lovely. He said, they're beautiful, aren't they? And this was 1988, so there was the Jaguar XJ40s, Jaguar XJS. He said, there's no prices on them. I said, well, I think most, if not all the cars here are sold. He said, that's a shame. I said, why? He said, they all sold. I said, well, I think we had a customer cancel on that one a few days ago, the blue one over there. He said, how much is that? I said, it's £38,000. He said, right. He said, I'll be back. And walked out. And I thought it smelled of alcohol, and that was it.
Yeah.
The following lunchtime, my secretary popped in the office and said, did you see a tramp yesterday? I said, I did, yes. He said, he wants to see you. And he came in with a bank cheque for 38 grand. Now this tramp was the gardener of one of the Midlands' leading firm of gents outfits, 100 shops. And he inherited the whole estate from a shop owner who disinherited his kids. And he bought a brand new Jaguar every 6 months, that guy. Didn't need to, but he liked the team and liked to change the colour, he bought a brand new. So that's just the danger of prejudging people.
Yeah.
The car industry is one of those industries that's sort of notorious for dishonesty, isn't it? You know, like estate agents, and you mentioned it before, like conveyancing solicitors and people like that. So have you ever been tempted to deal dishonestly with either your customers, the employees, or the car manufacturers?
Well, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about it, as you mentioned, it happened about 10, 11 years ago. It was October, and Mitsubishi paid their bonuses to dealerships the month after the 3-month quarter end is finished. So Jan to March, April to June, July to September, and the bonuses for the cars you sold in July to September get paid in October. And this money comes out of the bank account, and I'll see a reconciliation at the end of each month. So at the end of November, my finance director came in and said, we've got a surplus of bonuses from Mitsubishi over and above what we should have earned. And it wasn't telephone numbers, guys, but it was a significant amount of money. And she said to me, that's a result, isn't it? And smiled and winked at me. And I think if we had overpaid a customer, and the customer knew about it, hadn't rung us up, I'd be miffed. So I was trying to put myself in Mitsubishi's position. I don't know whether you've seen these rubber armbands some people have on their arms with the word letters WWJD on. Have you seen those? I mean, I think Bob Geldof had some from his Live Aids, and there's increasingly many kids, a rubber band on their wrist with something written on it. And WWJD is worn by a lot of young Christian guys, just a prompt during the day to say, what would Jesus do? And I had a what would Jesus do moment late November, 10 or so years ago. And the easiest thing in the world is to keep the cash. Just to be honest, once they run the payment run, they don't go back and re-audit it and recheck it. If it's above or below, that's it, unless it's queried. Now, Mitsubishi was owned privately by one man who started Mitsubishi in the 70s. And unlike most other manufacturers in the UK, which are owned by their global head offices, this was owned by one guy. And his son, who's my age, worked for the business. And I went down for a meeting in Mitsubishi the week before Christmas. And I felt to my statesman, I went to see Stephen, and I said to Stephen Blackburn, I said, Stephen, great to see you. We chatted about the business, 5-10 minutes matter. I said, there's something I must say to you. I said, we've been reconciling our bonuses for the end of September, and you paid us a surprising amount more than we were expecting. Now this is Stephen's money, okay, so it's father and son business. And he smiled at me and said, whatever we paid you, he said, Mike, you've done a brilliant job this year for us as a franchise, excellent job on the PR side, whatever we paid you, keep it, happy Christmas. Now, you could say I should take a cheque down and put it right up his nose and not go until he's taken it off you, but you know, it was a few thousand. It wasn't tens of thousands of pounds, but I had a clear conscience when I'd done that. And I wasn't speaking to the guy on security at the gate, I was speaking to the owner of the business. And I felt a bit as transparent as possible with him. So I think when you have challenges like this, and it seems a bit one way as a Christian, because if you've always got to cough up to something that's in your favour inappropriately, you normally end up squaring off and standing still, no better than you should be. And on the flip side is that other people will shortchange you. We buy cars from all over the country, and we have a computerised system called Auto Trade Mail. And 6 months ago, a Skoda Fabia flip hooked on screen, which is just the kind of stock we sell. It was a trader in Southampton selling it. Now, we'd normally buy from main dealers, so you'd put your car in part exchange at the local Ford business. They would ring us and say, we've got a 3-year-old Mazda, do you want to buy it? We say yes. We'd come to Ford's in Preston, Evans Halshaw, and they take our cheque and we take their car and off we go. But occasionally we buy from traders, and this guy offered us his car at £5,500. And so we agreed to pick it up on the Thursday. And on Wednesday we did a telegraphic transfer of the money into his bank account. And we sent our driver to Southampton on the train, and when we got there the car wasn't there. In fact, it was never going to be there, because he'd sold that car 3 times on a Wednesday. So he was sitting on 3 lots of £5,500, £16,500 for a car. And he sold it to the business who he thought would be most aggressive, most upset. And they found that was short-changed. So 2 of us are £5,500 out. And he promised us faithfully he'd pay us £100 a month for 55 months. He made 3 payments, and I got his bankruptcy hearing note in the post this morning to say that he'd gone bust for £250,000, and none of us had any chance of seeing any money again. So in human terms, I feel a bit sore. Well, I feel very sore, because it's the biggest bad debt I've ever had in business in 20 years. But you've got to fall back as Christian the fact that God is in control, God is sovereign, and at some stage later in life, I think I will have learned something from this experience. And I think this whole issue of integrity in business is quite interesting, because God settles for nothing less than 100%. And it does seem a bit one way as a Christian sometimes, but that's the feeling today. It's not how I feel next week or next month, probably, Steve. So is that okay? That's a real life example, yeah. Like today. So, yeah, definitely.
So, thinking about the future, thinking about the future there. Where do you think, this is like a proper interview question, this one. Where do you think you
get the job if I get this one right?
I don't know. We'll have to ask the panel. Where will your company be in 10 years' time, and where do you think you will be in 10 years' time?
That's interesting, because I think in business there's so much ego, and that's not helped by being serenaded by the motor manufacturers and the bank. So if you take £1 million loan out over 10 years and you pay it back after 6 or 7, the bank come back and say, oh, you did so well, Mark, do you want to borrow another $1 million for something? Because they don't lend money, they don't earn money, do they? So they've got to back the right horse, as it were. And you know, when you're building a dealership, that's roughly the cost of a building line, that's over the road. So it's telephone numbers. And so the bank said that to you, and then the car manufacturers say, do you know what, you did such a good job for us in Chester, would you like to open another business in Warrington with us? So you've got the bank saying have some, go on, have some, and the car manufacturer saying you're great, wildest dreams, and you've just got to be very wise as to when to realise enough's enough. And there's a lovely verse in Philippians 4, and Paul, the apostle, St. Paul, talks about the secret of being content at all times. And I think in whatever line of work we're in, it would be so easy to fall in the trap of just bigger is better. And so I'm sensing, Steve, the size and shape of the business is now is the size and shape it'll be in 10 years' time. Otherwise, we'd be chasing after something that had no real eternal value. And so I think God's entrusted me with a business that isn't awfully big. We're minnows in the motor industry nationally, but we have a good local presence, we're well respected, and I think we can speak about Christian values to a degree that we wouldn't be able to if the experience was diluted by a bigger business. So that's probably my take on what we're doing in terms of, I have no idea where God's going to take the business. You know, I think the real test as Christians is when the wheel falls off, as it were, and something goes terribly wrong. I'm not yet in a place where something really terrible has happened to me, but I know some Christian guys where they have been through some really tough times. A guy called Job in the Old Testament had some really challenging times, and I've not been there, so I don't know where God's going to take me for 10 years, but God willing, we'll run the business well with integrity, and we'll engage with people. I mean, what we do every year is we start a Christmas carol event for our customers, and in the last 6 years it's grown to 1,200 customers coming to Chester Cathedral. So people are in no doubt at all about what drives us and what our values are. And there are lots of opportunities, if you run a business or you do your job well, to talk about your faith with people.
One final question for me. This isn't a faith-related question. I just thought everyone would really like to know, and I've got a car dealer in the room. But when you're going to buy a car, if you negotiate really, really hard as a customer, at what point does it really hurt the dealer? Or are the margins so big, you've got so much to give away, it never really hurts you?
Oh, isn't that lovely? When we said £10,000 car, some folk think we bought it for 5,000. The reality, Steve, now...
That's it for 4.
Yeah, you're so wrong, it's 4,000. The reality is, on a Lexus, we'd have paid 9,500 for a £10,000 car. On a Mazda, we'd have paid 9,400 for it. And on a Skoda, we'd have paid 9,200 for it. So you can see the 5%, 6%, 8%. So that's the haggle room we have. And you keep your nose clean, and you train your staff, you don't have crisp packets lying around the place, and we get a further payment at the end of the year of about the same value if we achieve all the training standards, the marketing standards, all of which cost money, but they give us a further payment. So there's not much haggle room there. And with the internet on used cars, if you want to buy a 3-year-old Mazda 2, you can go on the internet, and now one in Plymouth and Colchester and Peterborough and Newcastle and Leyland and Chester have all got to be within £100 of each other, otherwise the thing doesn't work. So this increased transparency means that, you know, the internet sets the prices. So we're selling 80% of our cars now, of the 2,500, within £95 of their screen price. So we've got to learn to very graciously and politely explain to someone that 9,995 means, best case scenario, 9,900, or we'll put 6 months tax on the car for you at our expense. So managing wheeler-dealer expectations has become more difficult. In Matthew, Jesus is talking in Matthew 6, and I've often referred to this passage as my lifetime anti-corrosion warranty I get from being a Christian lad. And I'm just trying to find something that would be helpful for you to listen to. There's 2 versions here. It's the New International Version you might find helpful. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more important than food, and the body more important than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to his life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the lilies of the field grow. They don't labour or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon, King Solomon, in all his splendour was dressed like one of these. That is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into fire. Will he not much more clothe you? You haven't heard this phrase before, O ye of little faith. So don't worry saying, what should we eat, or what should we drink, or what should we wear? Even folk who aren't Christians run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. And this is where it comes to crunch, fellas. But seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness, And all these things, everything else will be added. Therefore, don't worry about tomorrow, as we draw to a close now, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Brilliant, isn't it? I mean, guys, this is it. This is the best-selling book in the world, and this is the best handbook for life, and I commend it to you wholeheartedly. It's been great being here, Steve. Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Enjoyed coming up north and having some time with you all. Thank you very much.
Can we just all give a big round of applause for that?